At my son's birthday dinner, I told my fiancée, we have to cut back. I can't keep paying for everyone forever. She rolled her eyes and said, then start with your kids' activities. I refused. When I got back, my things were on the porch. Locks changed. My fiancé said, we made a decision. I didn't make a scene. I said nothing, just scheduled a message. The next morning, everything changed. My name is Reynold. I was 39, a welder, and up until that night, I had spent most of my adult life believing that if I worked hard enough, stayed calm enough, and paid enough bills, I could hold a house together by force. I was wrong. It happened at my son Owen's 10th birthday dinner. We were at a family steakhouse with paper placemats, noisy booths, and one of those dessert menus with pictures that never looked like the real thing. Owen had a paper crown on his head because the waitress put it there, and he was trying to act like he was too old for it while secretly loving every second. My daughter Lily sat beside him, swinging her feet and tracing the edge of her napkin. She was 7, quiet, careful, and the kind of kid who always said thank you before anyone reminded her. Across from me sat my fiancée, Marissa, with her sister Dana and Dana's husband Curtis. Their 2 boys were there too, loud and sticky with soda, already talking about the trampoline park trip Marissa had promised for the weekend. I had paid for that too. I had paid for almost everything for a long time, and that night I finally said the one sentence I should have said a year earlier. The check hadn't even hit the table yet. Owen was still smiling over the little chocolate cake they brought out with one candle shoved in the center. Marissa was talking about Dana's electric bill, how rough things had been for them lately, how we might need to spot them again, just until Curtis got more hours. I remember looking at my son. He had a smear of frosting on his upper lip. Lily was carefully peeling the paper wrapper off a straw. It was his birthday dinner, and somehow we were once again discussing somebody else's emergency. Something in me went still. I said, calm as I could, we have to cut back. I can't keep paying for everyone forever. Not loud, not angry, just true. Dana leaned back first, like I had insulted her personally. Curtis stared down at the table. Marissa rolled her eyes so hard I heard the breath leave her nose. Then she said, then start with your kids' activities. Not our bills. Not the streaming subscriptions she put in my name for her family. Not the monthly money I kept sending Dana. Not the truck repair loan Curtis still hadn't paid back. Not the groceries I covered when Marissa's mother came up short every other week. My kids. I looked at her, and for a second, I honestly thought maybe she'd laugh and say she didn't mean it. That maybe she had said something ugly without thinking and would back up. She didn't. She took a sip of her drink and shrugged. Owen doesn't need baseball and karate. Lily doesn't need dance. That alone would fix a lot. Lily stopped moving. That was the moment for me. Not the words themselves. The way my daughter went completely still. Like even at 7, she knew she had just been measured and found too expensive. Owen looked down at his cake. It was his birthday, and the room had shifted around him. I felt my hands go tight under the table, but I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene in the restaurant. I wasn't going to give anybody that. I said no. We are not starting with them. Marissa gave me that cold little smile I had learned to hate. Then don't complain. The waitress came with the check right then, and for one stupid second, everybody pretended we were normal again. I paid it. Of course I did. I took Owen and Lily out to the truck, buckled them in, and told them I needed to swing by the supply yard because I had left something there after work. That part was true. I really did need to grab a welding hood I'd left in my locker. Mostly, though, I needed 10 quiet minutes before going home. Marissa said she'd head back first. I still remember the way she kissed Owen on top of the head before leaving. Like none of it had happened. Like she hadn't just suggested cutting my kids out of their own lives to keep funding everybody else's. I drove to the yard, sat in the truck for 3 minutes longer than I needed to. Then I went inside, got my hood, and stared at myself in the scratched metal of the locker door. I looked tired, not normal tired. Used up tired. I had met Marissa 4 years earlier, after my divorce. She was funny then, easy to talk to, the kind of person who made a room seem lighter when she walked into it. She said she loved how devoted I was to my kids. She said it made me different from other men she'd known. Maybe she even meant it back then. Or maybe she just meant she had found a man with a trade, a house, decent credit, and a weakness for being needed. By the time I drove home, the porch light was on. So were the kitchen lights. I grabbed my hood, my lunchbox, and stepped up onto the porch. That was when I saw my things. Not all of them, just enough to make the point. A black contractor bag stuffed with my clothes, my work boots, my shaving kit, 2 framed photos from my dresser, a charger, a stack of folded shirts in a laundry basket, my old denim jacket, just sitting there under the porch light like a yard sale nobody wanted. The deadbolt on the front door had been changed. For one full second, I thought maybe there had been some mistake, some insane misunderstanding. Then the front curtain moved. Marissa opened the door just enough to stand in the gap. Dana was behind her in the hallway with her arms crossed. That hit me almost as hard as the lock. We made a decision, Marissa said. We, not she, not I. We. I looked past her toward the staircase. My first thought, not even for myself. Where are Owen and Lily? In their rooms, she said. And they don't need to hear a fight. I said, there isn't going to be a fight. She folded her arms. Good. My heart was pounding, but my voice came out level. Open the door. No. Dana stepped closer in the hallway like she had any right to be there. Marissa said, you embarrassed me tonight. You keep acting like everything belongs to you because you pay for it. I looked at her for a long second. Everything does belong to me. The house is in my name. She didn't blink. Not for long if I can help it. That told me a lot in very few words. I said, let me speak to my kids. Marissa hesitated, then called them down like she was doing me a favor. Owen came first, in his socks, crown gone, face pale. Lily stood halfway on the stairs, clutching the rabbit she slept with. She looked from me to the bags on the porch, and then to Marissa. No child should have to read a room like that. I crouched down. Hey, it's okay, Owen asked, very quietly. Are you leaving? Every ugly thing I wanted to say died right there. I smiled the best I could. Not from you. Lily took 2 fast steps down and wrapped herself around my neck. I held her for a second and felt how tense she was. I need you both to do something for me, I said. Go get your overnight bags. Just the small ones. Pajamas, toothbrushes, school things for tomorrow. Marissa snapped. They're not going anywhere. I stood up slowly. Yes, they are. This is my home too. No, I said, it isn't. Dana started talking then, loud and useless. Something about respect and partnership, and how Marissa had every right to protect her peace. I ignored her. I looked at Owen. Go pack, buddy. He didn't argue. That was another thing that made me sick. He had gotten too used to adult mess. He just turned and went upstairs with his shoulders stiff. Lily followed. Marissa stepped onto the porch and tried to block me from going in farther. You can't just take them because you're mad. I'm taking them because you just told me to cut their lives first. That's not what I said. It is exactly what you said. She lowered her voice, trying to sound reasonable now. That was always her move, once witnesses might matter. Reynold, you're being dramatic. We're talking about tightening the budget. By taking things from my children, while your sister sits in my house. Dana said, watch your tone. I finally looked at her. You should not be in this conversation at all. She actually laughed, which was a mistake. Because in that second, the whole pattern lined up so clearly, I almost felt stupid for needing so long to see it. Dana and Curtis had been in transition for 18 months. That transition included me covering 3 rent gaps, 1 transmission repair, 2 overdue utility bills, school clothes for their boys, and 1 weekend cabin deposit for a family reset they never paid me back for. Marissa's mother had a prescription crisis every few weeks that somehow cost exactly $180 each time. Curtis borrowed my trailer and returned it with a cracked light. Dana used my warehouse club card like it was a public service, and every time I slowed down even a little, Marissa told me family helped family. Funny how that only ever flowed one direction. The kids came down with their bags. Owen had packed for Lily too. That alone nearly broke me. I took both bags and said, shoes on. Marissa moved in front of the door. If you walk away over this, don't expect things to be the same. I said, They already aren't. I loaded the kids into the truck. I picked up the laundry basket and contractor bag and shoved them in the back. I didn't slam anything. I didn't curse. I didn't threaten anybody. I just drove. We stayed that night at my friend Nate's place. He had a finished basement, a couch that folded out, and enough sense not to ask too many questions while the kids were awake. He ordered pizza at 10:30 at night because Owen whispered he was still hungry after not touching much at dinner. Lily fell asleep with her shoes still on. Owen stayed awake longer. He sat beside me on the foldout while Nate rattled around upstairs, pretending not to listen. Finally, Owen said, "Did I ruin dinner?" That question will stay with me for the rest of my life. "No," I said. "None of this is because of you." He nodded, but it was the nod of a kid trying to be brave for his father. Then he said, "She doesn't like when money is for us." There it was, plain and awful. A 10-year-old had seen the pattern before I admitted it to myself. I asked, "Why do you say that?" He shrugged, eyes on the blanket. "She gets quiet when you pay for my cleats, and when Lily needed new dance shoes, she said maybe she could skip the spring class." I sat there with my jaw locked. I should have known. I did know. I just kept sanding the truth down until I could live with it. The next morning, I woke before sunrise and stepped outside with my phone. I did not send an angry text. I did not call Marissa and scream. I did not post anything online. I did not call her mother or her sister or anybody else. I scheduled a message, not emotional, not dramatic, just exact. At 8 a.m., it went out to Marissa, Dana, Curtis, and Marissa's mother in one group thread. This is formal notice that as of today, I am no longer covering any personal or household expenses for any of you. That includes rent help, utility payments, grocery orders, phone bills, streaming accounts, car insurance assistance, and any future loans or reimbursements. No one but my children will remain on my cards, accounts, or subscriptions. Do not charge, request, or expect anything further from me. If any automatic payments are still connected, they will be removed today. Then I got to work. By 8:10, I had removed Marissa's family from the grocery delivery account. By 8:14, I changed the password on the warehouse membership app. By 8:19, I canceled the theme park weekend deposit I had fronted for Dana's boys and my kids, because it was booked through my card. By 8:26, I removed Marissa's mother from the prescription delivery profile I had been paying through. By 8:31, I logged into the phone account. That one mattered most. The main plan was in my name. Marissa, Dana, and Curtis had all been on it for almost a year because it was cheaper bundled. It had been cheaper for them. I transferred my line and Owen's emergency watch line to a new account and scheduled the remaining 3 to terminate at the end of the billing cycle, not immediately. I wasn't trying to strand anyone without warning. I just wasn't paying anymore. By 8:47, I called the bank and froze the authorized user card Marissa had for household expenses. By 8:53, I called my lawyer's office. Not for revenge, for structure. By 9:10, I had taken screenshots of every transfer I'd made for the last year that had nothing to do with my children. I didn't know yet what I'd need, but I was done walking into things blind. Then, I sat in Nate's driveway and watched the phone start lighting up. Marissa first, then Dana, then Curtis, then Marissa's mother. Missed call after missed call, text after text. You're unbelievable. So this is what you do after one disagreement. You're punishing everyone. Dana, my power payment is due today. Curtis, bro, be reasonable. Marissa, you are humiliating me. That one almost made me laugh. Humiliating her. As if my belongings on a porch and a changed lock had been some kind of delicate conversation. I didn't answer any of them until noon. At noon, I sent one sentence to Marissa only. You changed the locks on my house and told me to cut my children first. We are done. Then, I put the phone away and took my kids to school. The day after that was a blur of practical things. My lawyer confirmed what I already knew. The house was mine, purchased before the engagement, deed in my name only. Marissa had no automatic ownership claim because she lived there. Eviction and access would need to be handled carefully. But her little "we made a decision" speech had no legal magic behind it. I changed my direct deposit to a separate bank account she had never touched. I called the utility companies and confirmed every account. Some were already in my name. Some had been switched around casually over time in ways I had been too busy to monitor. That was over now. I filed a police report documenting the lockout and the property left outside. Not because I wanted a scene, but because records matter. Then I picked my kids up from school. Lily climbed into the truck and asked, "Are we sleeping at Uncle Nate's again?" "Just a little longer," I said. She nodded. Okay, no tantrum, no complaint. That hurt worse than if she had cried. Kids should not adapt that fast to instability. That evening, my sister called. My actual sister, Tessa. We hadn't always been close, mostly because life got busy, and she lived 40 minutes out with her wife and twin girls. But she had a way of getting to the point. She said, "I heard some version from Marissa. I'm assuming the truth is worse." It is. You and the kids can come here. That was it. No lecture, no suspicion, no both sides. I nearly said no out of habit, out of pride, out of that stupid male reflex to handle everything alone. Instead, I said, "Thank you." So we packed up from Nate's and went to Tessa's place. The twins gave Lily one of their blankets and acted like it was a ceremony. Owen was awkward for the first 10 minutes, and then disappeared into the den with a board game and Tessa's wife, Carmen, who understood boys without forcing them to talk. That first night at Tessa's, after the kids were asleep, I told her everything. Or tried to. Every number I said out loud sounded worse than it had in my head. 700 for Dana's overdue rent. 320 for Curtis's tires. 180 here, 96 there. 200 for school pictures. 150 for groceries. A $400 short-term loan that vanished into silence. The family water park weekend. 1,100 with tickets. Christmas gifts I bought from all of us last year. Nearly 2,000. The couch Marissa insisted her mother needed after that awful back flare-up, financed on my card. Tessa just stared at me. Then she said very softly, "They were feeding off your guilt." I rubbed my face. "Maybe." "No," she said. "Not maybe. They figured out you would do anything to keep peace around your kids. So they made every demand sound urgent and every boundary sound cruel." That landed hard because it was true. Marissa had learned early that the fastest way to move me was to frame it like generosity, family, stability, home. She knew I took pride in being reliable. She knew my own father had been inconsistent and broke half my childhood, and I had built my whole adult life around not being him. So every time she wanted me to cover something ugly, she wrapped it in language I couldn't ignore. A good man helps. A real family doesn't keep score. Kids are watching how you show up. She used my values as a pry bar, and I let her. 3 days after the lockout, I went back to the house with my lawyer's advice in hand and a police escort arranged just to keep things clean. Tessa stayed with the kids. Marissa acted shocked that I had taken it this far. That phrase. People love that phrase when they are finally facing consequences. There were throw pillows on my sofa I hadn't bought. Dana's boys' shoes by the door. Curtis's tackle box by the hall closet. It looked less like my home and more like a camp that had formed around my paycheck. I stood in my own living room and felt strangely calm. The officer was polite. My lawyer's paralegal was on speaker. Marissa tried tears, then anger, then softness. "Reynold, can we not do this in front of strangers? We are doing this because of what you did in front of my children." She winced at that. Maybe because it was true. Maybe because the officer heard it. I gathered the essentials first. My documents. The kids' birth certificates, school forms, passports, insurance papers, my tools, the deed file, tax folders, my laptop, the small safe from the bedroom closet. Marissa stood there with her arms wrapped around herself. "So that's it? You're just destroying us?" I said, "No, I'm separating from you. There's a difference. What about all the plans we made?" I looked at her. Those plans always seemed to cost me and my kids first. She had no answer to that. Dana showed up midway through, which would have almost been funny if I wasn't so tired. She came in hot, voice raised, talking about loyalty and how I had blindsided everyone. and her boys had been crying because the trampoline park weekend got canceled. I said, I'm sorry they were disappointed. She stared at me, waiting for more. There wasn't more. Not every disappointment deserves rescue. That was new for me. She switched tactics fast. You know we were counting on that utility payment. I said, I know. Then how can you just stop? Because my daughter froze at a dinner table when your sister told me to start with my kids. Because my son already understands too much about adult selfishness. Because I am done financing people who see my children as the first place to cut. But what I said out loud was simpler. I'm not your backup bank. The room went quiet. Dana laughed once, sharp and ugly. Wow, so that's who you are now. No, I said. That's who I should have been sooner. I moved back into the house 2 weeks later, not because everything was settled emotionally. It wasn't. But Marissa had gone to stay with her mother after the lawyer's notice. And once the legal steps were clear, I brought the kids home. The first thing Lily asked when she walked in was, "Is it ours again?" I swallowed hard and said, "Yes." She nodded and ran her fingers along the kitchen counter like she was checking whether it was real. Owen went to his room and stood there for a minute, looking at everything. Not smiling, just taking inventory. Kids do that after instability. They learn to scan. That night, I ordered takeout, and the three of us ate on the living room floor because I hadn't put the dining chairs back where I wanted them yet. Halfway through his fries, Owen asked, "Are baseball and karate staying?" I looked right at him. "Yes," Lily asked. "And dance?" "Yes." That was when both of them relaxed. Not all the way, but enough that I noticed. It shamed me a little how much reassurance they needed over things that should never have been on the table. Marissa kept texting for a while, sometimes angry, sometimes sentimental, sometimes trying to sound practical, asking if I could just cover one last thing because her mother was short, or Dana was behind, or the phone bill had gone through. And wasn't that partly my responsibility too? I stopped reading after a point. My lawyer handled what needed handling. I answered only when it involved retrieving specific property or formal matters. The rest of it, I met with silence. Silence can do what arguments never do. It forces people to stand in the shape of what they've done. A month later, Owen had his first baseball game of the season. It was cold enough that parents kept hands wrapped around paper coffee cups, and the grass still looked winter thin in patches. He was nervous. I could tell by the way he kept tightening and retightening the Velcro on his batting gloves. Lily had dance that afternoon, so Tessa brought her later in her recital bun, still in leggings under a coat. She came running over to the fence and waved at Owen like he was in the major leagues. He grinned, a real grin. The kind I hadn't seen much since that birthday dinner. He struck out his first at bat and looked crushed for exactly 10 seconds. Then he shook it off. Next time up, he knocked a grounder into the outfield and made it to first. When he looked toward the stands, I was already on my feet. So was Lily. So were Tessa and Carmen and the twins. That mattered. Not because it was dramatic, because it was steady. Later that evening, after dance, Lily sat on the kitchen counter eating apple slices while I fixed one of the cabinet hinges Marissa had always said we'd get around to. Lily asked, "Are we still a family?" Kids asked the cleanest questions. I set the screwdriver down and turned toward her. "We are," I said. "What about Marissa?" I chose my words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that mean they can't live together anymore. Because she was mean about dance? I let out a breath. Because she wanted things that would hurt you and Owen, and I should have stopped that sooner. Lily nodded like that made sense. Maybe it did. Children understand fairness before adults ruin it with justifications. Then she held out an apple slice to me and said, "You can have this one." I took it. That was her way. Quiet little gifts. The real fallout came in waves. First, Marissa's mother left me a voicemail saying I had abandoned a woman who stood by me. She never mentioned the lockout. Then, Curtis texted that he hoped I could sleep at night knowing families were suffering. Dana sent a message so long, I only read the first line. "I hope one day your kids understand what kind of man you really are." I deleted it. My kids already understood more than they should. I wasn't going to let those people narrate me to myself. Some mutual friends drifted off when the money stopped flowing through group plans and family weekends dried up. That was fine. Anybody who only likes the version of you that pays is not losing. They are being filtered out. Work helped. Welding is honest. Steel either holds or it doesn't. A seam is clean or it isn't. Heat changes metal in visible ways. There's comfort in that. At lunch one day, my foreman, Duke, sat beside me on an overturned bucket and said, "Heard you had a rough month." I gave him the shortened version. He spat into the gravel and nodded. Took me till 45 to learn this. Some folks would rather call you selfish than admit they got too comfortable spending your strength. That stayed with me. Not just money, strength, time, calm, reliability, access. The belief that I would show up no matter how unfair things got. That was the real resource they were draining. By the time summer rolled around, the house felt different. Lighter, not perfect. Healing is not some movie montage where everybody laughs in a sunlit kitchen and the pain becomes a lesson overnight. There were still moments. Owen sometimes asked whether Marissa would come back for birthdays. Lily still got tense if voices rose on television. I still woke up some mornings with that old shame creeping in, the voice that asked how I could have missed it for so long. But then, ordinary life would answer. Baseball schedules on the fridge, dance shoes by the door, packed lunches lined up in the morning, bills paid without hidden passengers attached, no extra groceries disappearing, no calls asking for just this once, no one sighing when money went toward braces, registration fees, or field trips. Peace isn't loud. That's one of the things I learned. It looks like enough milk in the fridge on Thursday. It looks like not dreading your own driveway. It looks like children asking for ordinary things because they trust the answer will be about the thing itself, not some adult resentment wrapped around it. In August, on a Sunday afternoon, I found one of Lily's drawings tucked under the fruit bowl on the kitchen table. It was our house, me on the porch, Owen in a baseball cap, Lily in a blue dress, 3 crooked flowers in the yard even though we didn't grow flowers there. A bright yellow sun in the corner, because kids still do that. Above us, she had written, in careful block letters, "Home is where nobody gets cut first." I had to sit down after I read that. Not because it was dramatic, because it was exact. Kids hear everything. They carry it in ways adults don't notice until it shows up on paper. I kept that drawing, not on the fridge where steam and fingerprints would wear it down. I bought a simple frame and hung it in the hallway near the front door. A reminder, not of what happened to me, of what almost happened to them. That fall, on Owen's 11th birthday, we had dinner at home. Just us, Tessa's family, Nate, and a couple of Owen's teammates. Burgers on the grill, store-bought cake, a folding table in the backyard. Lily insisted on hanging streamers, even though the wind kept ripping one side loose. The twins chased each other through the grass. Nate burned the first batch of hot dogs and acted offended when we laughed. It was noisy and uneven and completely ordinary. Owen got a new glove and a stack of baseball cards. Lily gave him a handmade coupon book with things like 1 free room cleanup helper and 2 extra turns choosing the movie. He loved it more than anything expensive. At one point, I looked around and realized nobody there needed me to prove love with my wallet. People had brought chips, soda, paper plates, a second cake, even candles because somebody forgot I already had some. Not because I asked, because that's what actual support looks like. It arrives with hands, not entitlement. Later, after everyone left and the yard was quiet except for the soft clink of the wind chime by the side gate, Owen sat on the back steps with me. He said, "This birthday was better." I smiled, even without the steakhouse. He nodded. No weird feeling. That was all. No weird feeling. That is what children deserve. Not luxury, not giant parties, not endless spending. Just a life where celebration doesn't come with a trap under it. I used to think being generous made me good. Now I think being clear made me better. Because generosity without boundaries is not kindness for long. It turns into permission. It teaches the wrong people that your children can wait while their comfort gets funded first. It teaches your kids to make themselves smaller so adults can stay pleased. I will never teach mine that again. I didn't win anything glamorous. I didn't destroy anybody. I didn't get revenge. I just stopped paying for people who wanted my children to go without. And once I did that, the whole picture changed. The people who loved us stayed. The people who used us got loud. Then they got distant. Then they got gone. Good. The last thing I did before bed that night was lock the front door and check the chain. Not because I was scared, just because I liked the sound of it now. The clean, certain click of something closing where it should. On the way to the stairs, I passed Lily's framed drawing in the hallway. Home is where nobody gets cut first. I stood there for a second in the quiet house, looking at those uneven letters. Then I turned off the light and went upstairs to my kids. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had finally chosen them in a way they could see. That was the whole point. Not punishment, not pride, protection. Sometimes the strongest thing a parent can do is not give more. It is to stop, to say calmly, clearly, and without apology, not at my children's expense. That boundary cost me a fiancé, a lie of a future, and a whole circle of people who only loved the part of me that paid. But it gave my son his birthdays back. It gave my daughter her dance shoes, without shame. It gave our house its meaning again. And that was worth everything.